So, a brief history about money. I think it's interesting to know that there not always have been the digital money in the space we grew up, or not even fiat money. And I have prepared some slides for that because I think it's good to know. So, money has taken many forms throughout history because, well, it has not always been the way it is today, and it has been very, very different. So, in the beginning, there was not cash or fiat money as we know it today. Money has been or had a different form. The origin was the bartender system. So, in the very basic version of money, there was people relying on trade. So, they had a direct exchange of service or goods for a service, or the other way around. But this one was very limited because if you had chickens and you produced some eggs and then you needed a haircut, very simplified example, then you needed somebody that has the skill of cutting your hair, but that also needs eggs in this moment, because otherwise you would not be able to pay him. So there needed to be a double coincidence of interests, otherwise the trade was very difficult. Furthermore, the eggs most likely you were not able to transport through the sea, because at some point they're gonna get bad, or the food gets bad, and then you cannot trade or sell it anymore for other services. So in the beginning, at a very small island, I think it's called Micronesia, just know the German word and try to translate it in the English language. It was a small island and they had some beautiful stones in the middle of the island. And until 1931, so it's not that long ago, just close to 100 years, you had the possibility to own a stone like this, and the stones have been very big and they have been limited, and it wasn't very easy to create a stone or add a stone like this. And when you wanted to buy something, for example a house or whatever, or a part of the land on the island, all the island was grouping and coming together, and then there was a public announcement that the stone or a part of the stone changed the owner. So everybody knew that the owner changed, and that was the part of the payment. So you had a stone and you could buy more because everybody wanted the part of the stone, because it was kind of a store of value and it was difficult to steal a stone. So that was one very early version of money. After that, there have been shells that were rarely or hard to find, kind of like coins, but were different shells in different areas of the world. It was like a very primitive kind of money, mainly in Africa and Asia. There was a long time where people just used rare shells to pay. After that, there was the creation of coins, especially in the Roman Empire. But there was a big difference between the Roman Empire, the East Roman Empire and the West Roman Empire. So both of them had a lot of wars, and wars are very expensive, so people needed to finance those wars. And the West Roman Empire continued fighting way longer than the East Roman Empire. And those wars needed to be financed, but it was at some point you cannot raise the taxes anymore because your population is poor as well, or is not willing to pay those taxes anymore. So there is the possibility of inflation. So if you have coins out of gold, and then for example you take copper and mix it into the coins, the value of the coin itself reduces and you can produce more coins, because you don't need more gold for more coins. You can also use copper, which is more commonly spread in the earth and more easy to gain. So you have kind of inflation, or one of the early cases or examples of inflation. So the West Roman Empire continues way longer fighting. They have a bigger inflation. As in most countries where there is a high inflation, the gap between the poor and the rich raises. You have more instability in the society, and the West Roman Empire dies before the Eastern does, because the Eastern stopped at some point and was not that aggressive with inflation than the West one. And you can go through history and this happens a lot of times where this happens. Ray Dalio wrote a book where he explains this very good and in awesome detail. So this is just a very quick and brief explanation. By the way, in between the shells and a monetary system. Like with the gold coins, there has been a money system of marbles, so small marbles. They have been difficult to create in Africa, but not difficult to create in Europe. So the Europeans created them and went to Africa, and the people in Africa wanted those marbles because they could play some games with them, and they were just fascinated by the marbles. So the Europeans created the inflation because it was for them cheap to create, but they were able to buy a lot of this with the marbles they created in Africa, and the Africans had an inflation, so the prices for Europeans over there had been very cheap. But this happens very often. So what was the second state of money? It was commodity money. So the rise of precious metal, either precious metal itself or in the form of coins, because the coin itself had a value because you could trade it, but also the material of the coin had a value. So, and the coin and precious metals don't get bad and you can use them anytime, not like an egg. When an egg lays around for 1 year, most likely you're not able to eat it anymore. So, but at some point then the fiat money was created, and things like the hyperinflation in Germany in 1923 happened. A lot of times hyperinflation happens when there is instability, political and unstable society, or a country needs to finance war and they need money, and then they print money and not the same exact value in the economy is created, and then you have more money with less goods and services, and then you have kind of an inflation, but that topic is way more complex. But you have things like hyperinflation in Germany during 1923, and the same happens in the First and the Second World War, and in most of the wars worldwide, you have a rising inflation. A solution after this, the US thought, now we're very smart, we will create paper money, but not only paper money, we will back it by gold. So paper money was like the new standard because governments created paper money, and it was way more convenient to walk around with paper money than with golden coins, because they are less heavy, you could divide them into smaller parts, but you needed to trust your government. But then the US stepped into the game and thought, like, we are very smart now. Every dollar or US dollar you have, you can trade for the same amount of gold. Like, there was a value, what is the value of gold, and every dollar you could change for gold. And for every dollar there is produced, there will be the same value of gold stored somewhere in the US or in the banking system of the US. This was the promise. So a lot of countries thought, oh, it's way more easy if we store paper money, because when people want to trade, you need to agree on one asset or one currency that you trade. So people accepted the US dollar for the American state. It was very convenient because a lot of people, it was more easy for the US to trade with different countries. The countries were happy because for them it was more easy to trade with the US or also other countries, and they knew at any time they can use their US dollars and trade them back to gold. Until 1971, where there was another big war, the US stepped in and they needed to finance that, and wars are always expensive, like I already said. And then the French started to mistrust the American people or the American government and said, okay, now we want to change all the US dollars we have back into gold. This took a very long time, and it happened. They went to the US with a lot of ships and traded their US dollars to gold. And after that, Nixon, which was the president at this time, decided now this gold standard is cancelled. So they made a promise, and then they said, and now this promise is not there anymore. But still, a lot of countries use the US dollars. But this is a brief history of money, and this is the state we are now in. After that, maybe another big development is like economic regions that move together with one currency, like the European Union. But this is like the main steps in the history of money summarized. So there was the gold standard and the fiat money. So it was a combination of, we have precious metals, but they're too heavy, they are inconvenient, you cannot divide them into small parts. So we combine precious metals as safety for fiat money. But when the gold standard was cancelled, it just relied on trust to governments, and not trust to precious metals after 1971. And then 15 years ago, the digital age started. Cryptocurrencies have been created like Bitcoin. After that, the development has been more, and we have thousands of coins. Not all of them are viewed as currencies. Even Bitcoin, there is a big fight between do you view Bitcoin as commodity or as currency. There are different opinions about this. In the end, it does not matter. It is a new asset class, and it's a new version of decentralized money because there is no centralized exchange or entity that decides how much money is produced or how you use it. It's a decentralized democratic system and a new step or development in the process or in the history of money. But why does money exist, and why don't we step back to the trading part and just trade? So you create something, or you have knowledge, or you have a service, and you trade this for something else. Because money is a medium of exchange, and it simplifies trading. Because there's no expiration date on money. You can divide it into very small parts. You can store it for a very long time. And everybody accepts it. So if you want to buy something and you live in an economic or in an economy or economical region, most of the people accept the same money. Of course, there are still parts in the world where this is not the case, but when you live in a region where you have a kind of stable government, kind of stable society, everybody accepts the same currency or even different currencies. So in Europe, even a lot of people accept US dollars, for example, or Swiss franc. So it is a medium of exchange which makes it way more easy for transactions. It is a store of value because it has no expiration date. It's a unit of account, so it's different to value how much is a haircut worth measured in eggs. But maybe one day you don't have eggs, you have chicken breast because your chickens died and now you have meat. So you always need to re-evaluate what's the value of a different commodity or service compared to the things you want to buy or the things you want to trade. And this can be very stressful and this is very inefficient. So when you have a unit of account, you have currency and you have a need for that. And money or a currency or a medium of exchange gives you the option to lend it, invest it, and kind of have an influence on the economy, like how much money you inject. If there's more money, there's more spending, there's more investing, so there's more likely that there's going to be growth or more transaction in the economy, which most of the times lead to growth. If you reduce the amount of money, you can reduce the speed of the economy growing, or you can reduce the transactions. So if there is a central entity, you can have an impact on the economic growth. Furthermore, it's social trust. So money nowadays, except Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, are regulated by a government. So they're backed by a government or by a central bank, which is very close connected to a government or multiple governments. So with this trust, you don't need to trust the other person, you need to trust your government and the government providing the infrastructure for the medium of exchange or the money. So it also connects people, it connects economical regions or different economies. So there's also a positive benefit because back in the days when you had like two different villages next to each other and each would have their own medium of exchange, it's not necessarily that you trust the medium of exchange of the village next to you. Maybe you just trust your own. So this is like kind of a connecting factor. So let us continue with the next one, with the long-term and the short-term debt cycle.